Hola a todos y todas.
Hello, everyone.
Bienvenidas,
Welcome.
bienvenidos. Welcome.
My name is
I'm
Lucette.
Lucette.
I'm with Co-Creative, and we're going to begin.
A
We're going
nuestra
to begin our
sesión.
session.
Les recuerdo que hoy el webinario es en español y para eso
And I
tenemos
just want to
algunas
remind you that today our
interpretaciones.
webinar will be in Spanish.
Los
So we
invitamos a que
invite you to
escojan su
choose
idioma de
an
preferencia.
interpretation channel.
Las
The
instrucciones
instructions
están
are
en el
in the
chat.
chat.
Just a reminder that today's webinar is in English and we have an interpretation function. We invite you to choose a channel with your language of preference, and instructions are in the chat. I'm also putting some instructions in the screen. También estoy compartiendo las instrucciones en la pantalla para que todos tengamos nuestro lenguaje predilecto y si podemos nuestro nombre agregar, si queremos inglés, ENG, si queremos español, agregamos ESP y si somos bilingües podemos B y L. Por favor,
Please
actualicen su
update your
navegador
Zoom name
para saber cuando
so that
hagamos
when we do breakout groups, we know how to divide them by language. ENG, ESP, or BIL.
también para cualquier apoyo técnico que tengan.
Also, if you need any technical
Pueden
support, you
mandarme
can
un
send
mensaje
me,
y con gusto les
Lucette
ayudamos.
Jaimes, a message
O
directly in Spanish,
para mi
or
colega
in English, you
Marisela
can reach
Wexler.
out to my colleague Marisela Wexler.
Entonces quiero
And I
dejar
just like to take a moment now to make sure
que
that
tenemos nuestros
everyone
nombres
has updated their name
actualizados.
to include their language preference. Marisela, if you could please help me.
Red y equipo.
Team, if you could help me out with that.
Muy bien. Entonces en este
So at
momento
this
ya tenemos
time, I think that everyone should be in their language channel
todo.
and should have their name updated.
I want to check. For some one, it says the translation function is off. So can anybody else let me know if you're having issues joining a room? It may just be this one case, but if that is multiple people's experience for those joining English, um, please let me know or otherwise.
Okay, so I'm going to begin. Hello, everyone. My name is Lucette Jaimes. I'm with Co-Creative. And to begin, I'd like to talk about the webinar series that we are organizing around well-being for all. We've been in a process of exploration about what well-being is and how we can support everyone to achieve it. And that is the question that we're exploring in this series of conversations. We've invited our friends, our allies, our partners to share their learnings, their stories about the nature of well-being, what conditions support it, and how we change the systems and ourselves so that everyone can be better most of the time. We imagine a world in which instead of focusing solely on systemic problems that need solutions, we're also working from a place of abundance, from feeling alive, from sharing generously our knowledge, our practices, our values that cultivate well-being a long time. Not just individual well-being, but also collective well-being. To us, it's important to create prosperous, flourishing conditions for everyone. And so these webinars are done as an alliance with the Academy for Systemic Change and Co-Creative. And so I'm going to be sharing some slides here about these organizations. So the Academy for Systems Change is an organization that offers programming based on different types of knowledge that create deeper ways of knowledge and changing of systems. While Co-Creative is a consulting team that helps diverse groups solve complex problems to create better futures together. We support collaboration across sectors such as health, economic development, energy, food, and education. And we also design and support collaborative innovation networks, and we train system leaders and system change leaders. Today, we're happy that we have our guests from Arare and Ancla Latin America. Arare is a social enterprise devoted to creating vibrant, healthy relationships between people and territories, propelling change toward more sustainable practices in socioecology and biodiversity. And Ancla Latam is an enterprise that works with entrepreneurs in triple impact and their collaborators, paying special attention to their social emotional well-being. And so we have Ana Lucia Castaño Galvis and Paz Bascuñan. Welcome. Can you wave? Thank you. I'll pass you the mic soon. So for today, what we want to do in this session is briefly after the presentations, we're going to arrive, we're going to ground ourselves, we're going to connect amongst ourselves, and then we're going to be talking about the topics that Ana Lucia and Paz want to share with us today. Then we'll do a group reflection. We'll use some different tools, we'll work with some metaphors, and then we'll have a final reflection before we close. I'd like to remind you that this is a 90-minute session and that during these 90 minutes, we are human beings. We are whole human beings. We're working from home, or maybe we're at the airport. There might be some chaos behind you. There might be children, our animals, our beloved pets might show up, and all of that is welcome in our webinar. You are welcome as your full self. And we invite you truly to, our colleagues, our friends, our clients, we invite you all to learn and co-create with us. We invite you to have a pen with you, some paper for any individual reflections or notes you might want to take. And today we are recording the session because we'll send it along in our follow-up email. And we also invite you to tag us in your LinkedIn publications today, if possible. So with that, I'm going to pause so I can help us arrive. And I'm going to help you cross a threshold so that we can go deeper into the topic of well-being. So I'm going to invite you to take a moment to see how you're sitting. Are you comfortable? Do you need to, if you need to give yourself a stretch, do it. Anything that feels important to help you arrive and be present during our time together. And I'm also going to invite you, once you've found a comfortable position, to take a deep breath, to inhale and exhale. And during your exhale, if possible, let go of everything you don't need during these next 90 minutes. You can pick it back up when we're done. But for right now, I invite you to release what you don't need, to cross the threshold so that we can share together with this topic. Thank you. Okay, so now it's time to introduce ourselves and to connect with other participants. We're going to be doing this through Slido, which is we're going to be asking some questions to get to know each other and find out who's in the room. So my colleague Marisela is sharing the link in the chat. You just have to click on it once Marisela shares in the chat. That's the Slido. And the first question is about sharing, our name and a gift or offering that you bring to our joined work today. So I'm going to wait to see if anybody is not able to access the Slido. Please let us know. So your name and a gift or offering that you're bringing to our work together today. Very well. We're going to wait one more minute. I am having some difficulty seeing what's been shared, what's coming up on the Slido. It's only showing me the question so far. So if someone could support me, someone from my team. Okay, so in my screen share, it just shows me the question. Does someone know how to share the answers? You have to wait until the answers start coming in. See, automatically you can see that 3 people are participating right now. But it says we have 10 already.
So at the bottom, Lizette, there's an arrow. And if you click over, it should, oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I can share my screen if that's helpful. Okay.
That would be great. Thank you. Let me stop here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marisela. This is great. So we see some gifts of curiosity, of openness, of integrating and connecting concepts, values, and ways of knowing. We see experience as a natural facilitator of human well-being. The gift of presence and total openness to share in an honest way my experiences and learnings, love and curiosity, listening, and my time. That's beautiful. We have gifts of opening, of desire to learn, of bringing love to systems change in the Spanish language, and culture and presence in Spanish. That's wonderful. Okay, let's go to the next question. The next question is, where are you joining from today? A place that we can find on the map. And so today we're joining from Colombia, from the Central Valley in California. We're joining from Istanbul, the United States on Abenaki land. We're in Washington, D.C., Santiago de Chile, Valle de Bravo. We're in Modesto, California. This is beautiful. We're coming from so many different places, from Germany, from Mexico. Welcome. And the next question. In one word, please share a value that consistently informs your life and work. Just one word per entry. So let's see our set of values here. We see empathy, care, community, listening, commitment, dignity, truth-telling, practice, collaboration, integrity, conscience. This is beautiful. All of this we're going to be bringing into our time together here as we learn and share with Ana Lucia and Paz. Thank you, Marisela. So now I'm going to pass the mic to Ana, who can begin talking to us about the B side of well-being. So Ana, let me know when you'd like me to share the screen. Thank you, Lou. You can do that now, and we'll get into it. Well, thank you all, those of you who are here today. It's such a pleasure to be sharing this exploration space with you together. We're going to begin with a little introduction on the origin of this exploration that we're inviting you to. And we want to talk to you about these hidden dimensions of well-being using a concept that is inspired by the knowledge of pre-Hispanic design in Latin America, and a little bit on the B side of, old records that we still use to listen to music, right? There's an A side and a B side. You can go on to the next slide. So what do we mean when we say the B side of well-being? There's so many ways in which humans build meaning and give meaning to things. We're going to talk specifically about well-being, but generally we associate meaning or significance to something that we see, that is tangible, that is in the space we're in. And you can go on to the next slide, Lou. This is an example. Next. This is an example of an artifact that the Quimbaya peoples who lived in Colombia on the Western mountain range used around 1200 to 1500 AD. And so this is like right before the Spaniards arrived, and they had these rolls that they used to print patterns. And they used them for many things, especially to make textiles. This isn't exclusive to Quimbaya culture. There's peoples all over the world that had technology such as this. But so for many years, archaeologists gave significance to this based on the lines, these like black squiggles that they left behind, as an example, of how the rodillos used the roll. But what happens? In pre-Hispanic peoples, there was a style of artifact construction and painting that we called negative painting. And so what artisans from different cultures around Colombia and other places in America were doing is that they would cover ceramics with wax. They would cover the fragments that they didn't want to paint. Okay, so what they painted was what they didn't want to cover in wax. And so the result of this drawing is what we see as an example here in this image. They drew the negative, they drew the blank space, what they wanted to leave behind. And then they would have like they would be able to show the image that they wanted to show. What they were painting, their focus was the absence. It's about the absence of information, of pigment, of additives, of color, right? So, that's how they would create multiple patterns that would pass on meaning. But again, like the initial meaning that they gave was about the absence, the negative space. And so we ask ourselves, what happens if we apply this principle of seeing things from this negative, from this blank space? Because we usually focus on what's already there. And when we think about well-being, we're thinking about well-being when it already exists. And there's many dialogues that, I personally love and enrich me about how to build well-being. What happens if it's not there? What do we do to bring it? And so if we focus on these examples on the screen, how do we focus not on the black parts, everything that's filled in? Let's imagine that that's already like well-being in life. And we believe that the significance, that the meaning of what well-being is given thanks to that configuration, what is given, what is present. Next slide. But what happens if it's not there? What happens with the negative space? What happens if we focus on these empty spaces? And what does this B side tell us about well-being? What does it tell us about the absence of well-being, about what we consider important to cultivate? And so that's a little bit of the invitation to focus on this blank space that also gives meaning, that also completes the frame, the image, the story that we tell ourselves about well-being. And if we ask ourselves, this B-side, what is it saying? What if we focus on this absence, on the state of ill-being, on the things that don't necessarily make us feel like we're in the presence of what we consider well-being? What can we learn about well-being when we're not well? When we're in that absence, in that blank space? The state of being that discovers, that reveals, and how can we reveal the narratives that we have around what well-being truly is to us? That are built from this vision in negative, this B-side, this opposite face. And that's a little bit of the exploration that we're going to be doing today. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Paz, who's going to help us explore, those of us who are here today, what this B-side says so that we can explore this negative a little bit from like a very personal place, because something that we want to honor is also the understanding that well-being means different things to different people in different territories, peoples with different ways of knowing as part of this world. And so what feels good to us, is to see these narratives in this B-side. What is it telling us about well-being? So I'm going to pass it to Paz so that she can join us in this reflection. Thank you so much, Ana Lucia. Thank you so much to all of you for being here and for, understanding, as Ana Lucia is saying, that well-being is different to all of us. And what do we do when we're not well? And so before we go on to a brief activity that we want to do with you all, just a quick reminder, really quick, to please update your name on Zoom to include English, Spanish, or bilingual, so that, and then also make sure that you're in your interpretation channel in case you arrived a little bit later. So we'd like to know, for you, what is well-being? When we talk about well-being, what comes to your mind? When we relate well-being to systems change or to change of agency, we're also going to share a new Slido, and I believe that link is now in the chat. Thank you, Marisela. And it's just going to be first, a word cloud. So try to just choose one word per concept, per idea, and you can add all of the words that you'd like to. Just make sure you add them one at a time. So we're going to be creating this cloud to help identify for this group right now, what is well-being? How do we relate it to the field of systems change or change making? And we're going to give you a minute to think about it and to be responding. There's no wrong or right answers. Everything is fine. And whatever you write today is also not written in stone. It's just so that we can start understanding what it looks like in this group when we associate well-being to systems change and to change making. And now we're gonna share the screen. Thank you so much. So we have trust, relationships, equality, lightness, support, care, authenticity, sustainability, community. Thank you so much. Challenge, creation. Very beautiful. Seen and heard, peace. Thank you. So now, in maybe a more elaborate answer, we'd like to hear what is an idea that you've heard or internalized about well-being or ill-being in your life. So what ideas or concepts, preconceived or yeah, what feelings or even beliefs have you held around well-being and ill-being in your life? It can be things that you've heard or that you've internalized. Thank you. To be able to care and sustain others, I have to be well. If I'm not well, I can't do anything for others. Individual well-being versus collective well-being. That polarity, right? That well-being is something to seek and to prioritize. That you have to be happy to be well. Wow. That well-being is the importance of the equilibrium between different areas of your life, physical, mental, emotional, and social. That well-being is achieved with effort, and that ill-being is the natural way of living in that effort. That we must prioritize well-being in our everyday work lives, our daily life. That it's all or nothing. Either you're living in a healthy way or you're not. And that there's no in between. You know, some of these beliefs can be pretty strong, right? They can hit hard. If it's something that we've been hearing since we were young or that we see reflected in our society. That well-being happens outside of work. Isolation. Thank you. Okay, it also says work hard and that should bring you joy. You know, there should be joy in your work. Full belly, happy hearts. That's something we say a lot in Chile. When money goes out the door, the heart goes out the window. Okay. What else are we seeing? That well-being, individual well-being versus collective well-being. That well-being is about not being disabled or sick. Gratification, deferred gratification. Okay, and so here's the next question. What happens when you experience ill-being in your life? How do you relate with it? How do you react to it? And here you can also explain yourself a little bit more if you'd wish. So what happens when you experience ill-being? And how do you relate with it? How do you react within it? Okay, and a lack of ability to focus, to concentrate. First, I reflect on what I'm experiencing and what it means. um, what I can and what I want. Um, I try not to build narratives around it. I try to hold the stories the mind creates lightly, that creates lightness. I avoid it, I hide it, I don't think about it or speak about it until it blows up in my face. It can manifest in different ways: stress, anxiety, sadness, even physical symptoms, deception, lowness, a complete lack of energy, and feeling like everything is just like weighing you down, you know, squashing you, bringing you down, depression. Okay. We can relate to more than one of these statements, right? Like maybe you wrote one, but then you read another and you go, that one also feels familiar. That's like a little bit of a heavy stone that I carry with me. Trauma, speaking about therapy, but also things that, that resonate and don't resonate. Like what happens if for me talk therapy does work, or I went to see a therapist and I had a bad experience, or maybe I don't have trauma, but I did have this recent experience that feels fresh in my mind and also brings that sense of ill-being. So how do I deal with that? How do I react to that? There's someone saying that they can't avoid height, like they can't avoid showing it. So how do we show it? How do we um react to what is happening? How do we show it in the world? How do we share it? And I don't know, Lou, if you see another pattern or something else that repeats that you think we should maybe explore a little bit more deeply. But if not, we can go on to the next part. No, maybe I'm noticing that yes, that we all have different ways of experiencing ill-being and also different ideas about what well-being is. I just want to note the diversity of responses, like we mentioned at the beginning, so that we can have like a careful exploration about this in our lives. And then, of course, in the next section. Thank you. I love it. And also, you know, just that we can use these, how we perceive well-being and ill-being. How do we react to ill-being and in the face of it? And so there's just a great diversity and it's different for everyone. And so what we're going to do now so that we can enrich ourselves even more with different perspectives of what is or isn't ill-being is we're going to go to groups and we're going to be posing ourselves two questions. So you can help me by sharing a screen. You can also take a screenshot and we're going to copy this in the chat so that you can take it with you. But the questions that you're going to discuss briefly are first, what do these answers tell us about the narratives around well-being and ill-being in the change-making field or of systems change? And second, how do these narratives affect our perceptions? How do these narratives show up in our lives and affect how we show up in our lives? And so we're going to be in groups of 3, I believe. And we're going to have around 3 minutes per person so that, you can keep track of your own time just to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. So that's about 9 minutes total. That's 3 minutes per person, a little bit less. And we'll let you know with a message.
So I will open the rooms, and right now we have anywhere between 2 and 3 people. If you have any issues when you get into the room, maybe things have shifted around, if you end up alone, I'll keep an eye on that. And if for some reason I haven't come to get you or I haven't moved you, you can come back to the main room, and we'll make sure that you get into a space with other friends here. Okay. I will open those rooms.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The questions are also in the chat. So if anyone has an older Zoom version, you can copy them and take them with you. If not, the questions will go with you to the room.
And one final thing to our amazing interpreters, you will be invited to a room, but you don't have to accept. I just had to put you in one. Okay.
So we'll see each other in a few minutes.
Thank you so much. Just a very quick reminder in the chat. They also put the information about interpretation if you arrived afterwards and you need interpretation, for every side. Put a parenthesis in your name and please let us know. Put the initials, whether it be bilingual or English. Thank you so much. How was it? How was the conversation? I'm sure that a lot of you were left with ideas that weren't fully formed, just like life is. Something that's incomplete gives that little space in the heart to just keep researching or looking for answers, and not only for us, but for the people that were with you in the same room. We would love to know how it went, listen to all of you guys. I don't think that will be possible because there's a lot of you, but I will invite you guys to use the chat if you can put the jewels that came out of this conversation so that all of us can take some of those diamonds with us. And also open up the mic for at least 2 or 3 interventions for anyone that feels comfortable and would like to do the go ahead. The mic is all yours, and so is the chat for those who don't feel comfortable talking or just don't want to share it like that. But please let us know. And the intervention can be in any language. It can be in English or Spanish. Our interpreters, they're wonderful. Are there, and that's why it's so important to let us know which language you're listening in. Would someone like to start sharing in the chat something that you thought about this, something that you said, something that was told to you? Oh, yes, the questions that we were answering. What were the results of those conversations? What are you realizing on how narratives affect our perceptions and how we show up in our lives? Thank you so much, Nurul, in your chat. They put the simple question, how are you? Can be answered in many ways beyond the rude way that we usually do it. Goes beyond answering to how we're used to. At least where I live and where I evolved, the question is, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Oh, I'm good also. And that's where we leave it. Let's see. Also, thank you so much, Idrit. It says hope, despair, well-being, zooming in and zooming out. We have to look at it from different perspectives. That's what I'm gathering from that. Thank you so much. completely free. You guys can keep on answering. Feel free to respond, whether it's in the chat or with the mic. We also have our own conversations internally. Thanks so much, Renee. They say productivity is usually what work wants. So how can we put that aside in order to take care of ourselves and each other? This may eventually become even more productive from a healthier space. I love that so much. Thank you so much. How can us taking care of us resonate in different aspects of our life, and not only at work, but also with family life, your life with friends, what we do in our day to day, the supermarket. We also want to share some pearls that came from that. I don't know if you can help me, Lou, sharing your screen. Oh yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Marta. Marta says, okay, 121? Yes, thank you. The distance from well-being, individual and community, the difficulty of talking about well-being to the people who are fighting every day to survive. Thank you so much. We're gonna be talking about this in a little bit, about the difference, or better said, how can we put this all of it together so it's a collective? When I share about my ill-being, it feels like I have a more authentic connection. That it could be ironic, but the destiny of our well-being is uh tied with the intensity of what we're sharing with each other. Sonia also shared in the chat, and they're saying we found the connection that exists in every culture with the necessities that we have. We're ill being when we don't have the social necessities to survive. And sometimes it becomes this unapproachable horizon, and it could go from something that's collective to something more private so that it can be achieved. Thank you so much for that. We are going to be talking a little bit more about this after we share our perils. Go ahead, Lou, and I am so sorry. You guys can keep putting things in the chat. We're going to be naming them too. Thank you so much for your jewels, for sharing them. For us, the idea that you need to be well in order to cultivate any sort of positive transformation in systems of any kind. Saying these phrases that are, if I'm not well, perfect, or completely developed in this area of life and work, that I can really facilitate, lead, or support in any process related to it. Or I think something similar came about in the answers. I should be a reference and an example of what I want the world to look like. Therefore, I must always be in perfect condition and resonance with that idea. We also have a few ideas. Thank you, Ross. It says, I'm often reminded how being vulnerable about sharing when we're not well supported spaces where others feel more able to share what's really going on with them. You can also help to sustain spaces where others are, where they don't feel that capable of sharing what's really going on with them in their lives. Raquel said, well-being and connection to the land is also something that's coming to my mind, something that's very present. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for creating this space. Oh, super. Thank you so much to you. I don't know if we have more time to share more jewels. Maybe 22. It says the idea that when you go beyond yourself, your limits, and your health in order to do your work or achieve your goals, you can wear the wounds and scars of that process as a badge of honor. You know, like that medal that gives you the honor. You know, the person who probably suffers the most is doing a great job, or sacrifice is necessary to achieve big changes. How does that resonate? Those narratives, we've heard them. We probably lived through them. To what point are they true? Or how can we live through them so they can be true? Those are questions that we make to each other and see. Because sometimes this is something that's very normalized and it's not necessarily something that we want to share or something that we want to be. You know, not only what you want to be to yourself, but to the people that are around you. So we take those big, big questions as a part of this conversation that we'll be having. Can you go to the next one, Lou? Thank you. And the last one says the idea that happiness should always be cultivated and that a happy, tranquil state is the only acceptable state for change makers and system practitioners, or anyone really. There's no room for vulnerability. I need to be strong for others and for myself so I can afford to show or even feel my own soft, tender spots. Mm, I I am only welcome and held when I'm in a good mood or in my highest best expression. I resonate a lot with that, thinking about how can I not affect someone else when I'm not feeling well. And you know, we transform, we put on this mask and we become this really rough and tough person. And to what cost? I think that will be the question that I'll be sharing it for my vulnerability. You know, like anger, sadness, the fear of being put to the side. You know, we need to have satisfaction, joy, excitement, which should always first personally be captured and pursued. Thank you so much, Lou, with this reflection. Thank you so much for everyone who shared their own pearls in the chat. And if there's any left, please don't refrain. Please put them in the chat. We'll be reading them. And with this last one, I'll be passing the word to Ana Lucia so she can take us to the last reflection of this session. Thank you so much, Paz. And thank you so much for everyone that has been appreciative. I am really connected with everything that you're saying in terms of talking about when we're vulnerable. It makes us connect with other people. You know, that authenticity, it just invokes it. And also talking about the relationship that's between some social conditions and structures and our individual sexuality. You know, not all the well-being is objective. Not all the causes are exclusively the responsibility of the individual. I'm noticing all of this and extend the invitation point and to the closing of this webinar is going a little bit deeper to this conversation of what happens when we're not doing that well and the difficulties that come with having that state of ill-being and also how hard it is. It's hard not only just to talk about how we're feeling, that was a lot in the chat, uh, but being in that state. There's a pattern that I notice sometimes, and it's the way that we ourselves with this, and it just gets kind of up, and we use it to think about the well-being of the collective. And the only way we can all go to the therapy for something. When we're thinking with the collective, and that's when everyone's doing good, and that's where we all share this well-being. Or how can it depend the way that we are building this up and how it reverberates and how it does personal well-being, and it goes a little bit further on the scale. And also what happens when we have these narratives that the ill being should be avoided at all costs, and when you're not feeling your best, oh, sorry, I turned on my video, that when you're ill, people, are the ones that were mentioned before,
And we ask ourselves then also, to what point, these mandates of always like pursuing well-being or always searching for these goals, like gets in the way of us honoring when we're not well, or limits our ability to avoid those states of being, and also to be able to learn from them, above all, which is what strikes us as most important in this exploration, right? What does ill-being tell us about what's important in being well? This other side of well-being, ill-being, meaning, like what tells us, what if we were able to transverse these moments with presence to ourselves and to others? If this idea of like needing to come out of these states, like if we recognize that it's a difficult state in which we maybe don't want to be voluntarily, but that's where we are because it's part of life. So what can we do to avoid, a state of ill-being? But what if we like weren't trying to escape it necessarily? So that to us has given us this metaphor that we found helpful, and also a question, because again, it's like I like the comment that Sonia made about getting close to people who maybe don't have material conditions that allow them to have like a healthy physical conditions, and you come to them and you're like, but you could be well because where well-being is your individual responsibility. Come, why don't you just like join my program, and then I assure you that you're going to be fine, even though there's like all of these conditions that are probably getting in the way of the person being well. What if instead of trying to resolve ill-being, we lived in it? What if instead of trying to resolve ill-being and always like launching arrows toward well-being, we were just in that moment saying, this is what's happening, I'm not well for this reason. And not just like what would that look like, but that if we honored ill-being on a personal level, but also if we honored the state, this negative state, this B side of well-being, if we honored it not just in ourselves as individuals, but in our groups, in our work teams, in our communities, in our society, to what point do we honor it or not? And what does it mean? If you want, Lulu, you can start sharing, because I have a brief metaphor that I'd like to share with you, and then maybe we can go deeper into this concept, or into this question of how we live in this state of being. But also with the invitation, part of the invitation of this webinar is, what would it mean for us to honor our B side? Knowing again that we can't always be, feeling vibrant and full and just super, super in that state that represents well-being to us. And that doesn't mean that we have to feel stuck. Next slide. What we want to offer you is just metaphors or ways of reinterpreting these spaces, this negative side, this B side of well-being, with two concepts that are very similar to each other. One of them being this idea of liminal space, which comes from anthropology, which talks to us about a time in a person's life when they're going through a transition, when they're going through one identity and way of being in the world, one way of relating to the community to another, right? Going from point A to point B. And then the liminal space is that threshold between both, right? Between the entry to one and the exit to the other. That threshold where we have shed our previous identity, we've left behind everything that we no longer are personally and in community, so that then we can continue evolving into who we're going to evolve when that ritual is over. So often, those times of ill-being in a person's life have to do with the liminal space. So a moment in which we're realizing maybe there's something that's out of order, maybe there's something missing, or that's too much, or whatever. And then we can travel with it. And we can think of ourselves as in transition, in transit. It's not just, we're like obsessed with this idea of like joy above all. No, like we can inhabit this transitional space. And how can that help us to find ourselves differently when we're not feeling well? Because, renaming it also as a transitory space, in my personal experience, takes away some of its like weight and gravity. And it also helps us understand that this is an ambiguous quality, it's a disorienting quality. Yes, it's a moment in which we can feel lost because our world is being, reconfigured. We're trying to reconfigure things within ourselves to be able to harmonize with our environment, with the relationship, with work, with whatever is happening inside our being. But again, this is the space of transition that by definition is chaotic, that by definition is disorienting, that by definition is a reconfiguring of ourselves. And again, what would happen if we looked at ourselves with this lens of this is a liminal space which I'm crossing through from state A, where I was, to state B, where I'll be, with everything that that implies, with all of that chaos. Next slide. Another metaphor that we can look at, so we can see how we inhabit that space between well-being and ill-being, because it's about how we get from what is taking energy away from us or health away from us, whatever you associate with your well-being, towards something that generates that generates life, builds it within ourselves. And a metaphor that I also enjoy is this in this idea of ecology is ecotones, which are these points in the landscape where there is a joining of two different environments. And there's a little bit of each, and there are points of like maximum diversity and maximum fragility. And there is a lot of interactions occurring in this transitional zone. So again, what if we integrated things into this transition? I I resonated a lot with one of the things that was mentioned about well-being being all or nothing. Either I'm really not well, I'm depressed, I have no energy, or I'm doing awesome and I can handle everything. And so a little bit of this invitation is, no, what if we are in transition from one to the other? As you can see in this landscape, there's curves, it's sinewy, there's things in this state where we're not feeling well at times, but that doesn't mean that we're deep in a hole at the bottom of the earth. Next slide. No, I just wanted to complement what you're saying with the texts that are being added in the chat, which also feel really pertinent. So Russ said that it seems unhelpful when happiness or well-being are the goal versus having them simply be like an outcome of living a life of meaning and being deeply present in our relationships with others and with our life. And then also Renee made another comment which was equally valuable, which is that when we attempt to escape our negative or ill-being, that B side or that you know that side that doesn't feel well, instead of accepting it as part of our full range of emotions, then we find ourselves in like a loop of addiction or other mental states that aren't whole. Thank you, Paz. Yes, that's, you know, something that really nourishes this invitation to think about what it would mean to honor it, right? Because if ill-being becomes something that isn't just like inescapable or not preventable, inevitable, right? But if it becomes just part of like our path in life, how can we honor it in a way that leads to a richer life? And again, this doesn't just come, you know, in relation to our personal responsibility, but also to changes in which we belong, to groups, to our family, to our work teams, our communities, etc. And so we have this question as well of like, what would it mean to honor it in all of these different nested systems in each of these levels? Because again, your individual well-being when you're working towards something or achieve something is not the same as the well-being that comes out, emerges from a team interaction or a community dynamic or a socio-ecological dynamic. And so with that, I'd like to pause and ask the team, because I'm not able to see the time right now for whatever reason. The intention was to maybe open like one last dialogue group to talk about this. Do we have time? Yes. Yes. So we're gonna explore a little bit this question of what does it mean? What does it mean to us to honor ill-being? Not just on an individual level, but in our groups, in the systems that we serve. You know, what would happen if, as Ross said, you know, we stopped thinking about well-being as a goal that we must follow, but just like an outcome that comes from living a present life? What would happen for us? Like, what would it mean to honor that ill-being when it's there in these different levels? And what could it reveal? What could our ill-being reveal about the conditions that we need to be well in these different nested levels? And you can focus on whichever level makes most sense to you right now in your conversation. And once again, we're going to be just in really small groups, and then we'll come back, we'll do a harvest, and then we'll close this virtual event. We're once again going to have 10 minutes and minutes for this conversation. Well, 9 minutes. Yes.
Okay. I'll open the rooms. You're going to be with the same groups. Maybe one member has shifted just to even out, depending on how the group has, or the numbers have shifted.
I love it when people come back from small groups because all the cameras are on and you get to see them all. Beautiful.
And a reminder that folks will need to join language channels again every time they come back.
Could we take advantage of the fact that everyone has their cameras on and take a picture? Just really quick. Okay, great. If anybody else would be able to turn on their camera, we appreciate it. This is the moment. No. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you, Boss. And thank you everyone for turning on your cameras. We're almost at the end of this webinar. And I want to invite you once again to please share what is coming up for you in these conversations around this question of what it means to honor ill-being, you know, that B side at these different levels of the systems that we serve. But if anybody else feels that they can share something out loud, now would be the time. We'd love to hear you in English or in Spanish. Once again, we have interpretation so that we can generate these encounters. So it's also good to be able to hear other voices in the front of the room. And if not, just the chat is also open. Thank you, Kim. Kim is sharing in the chat that it is an obvious yet radical notion to honor ill-being rather than only striving for well-being. Thank you. Yes, if that's all we take away today, I will feel that I've done a good job. So, because yes, it's something that seems obvious, but sometimes naming what's obvious helps us make it feel more natural. So we can also say like, yes, this is honorable. In Spanish, the word amable, it doesn't just mean kind or gentle, it also means like susceptible to love. And that strikes me as something that's also like very obvious. Um, so yes, thank you. And thank you, Renee, for you as well. And I was thanking us for the safe space to share and to listen, and that she feels that she has grown from being here today. And I'm gonna pass it to Lou so that she can help us close out. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Paz. Thank you for sharing. I just have some points that I want to highlight as we process and integrate our knowledge from today. These points are about diversity and the subjectivity of opinions that we encounter when we say well-being and ill-being, and that this is influenced by narratives that sometimes we are born with. And so sometimes it's important to see what impacts our well-being and our ill-being. And something else that I learned that I love is the idea of honoring and sitting with our ill-being. And I love the tools that you shared about liminal spaces that honor transition and ecotones where those different environments are joining together. And the last thing that I want to say is that ill-being and well-being happen in our experience. We share every part of our being, the physical, the social, the environmental, the relational. And so when we feel well or we feel ill, all of that is happening in every single dimension. So thank you, Anna. Thank you, Bas. It's been so wonderful to have you here. It's already time. And so what I invite you is to do two things. If you wish, Marisela is going to share some links for LinkedIn and the System Change Academy, all the orgs represented are going to be in the chat. And we also want to just say thank you for being here. And please share something in your own language, a blessing, an appreciation, a goodbye, so that we can all close out in that way. You can also say it out loud. That would also be beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Midasi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so, so much.
Hola, Nurse.